Welcome to The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury, Professor of Computer Science at the University of St. Thomas. In each lively 25-minute episode, Mark and producer Rico Smart dive into topics shaping our world, featuring expert interviews and engaging live audience participation. Discover groundbreaking ideas for the future and timeless wisdom you can't afford to forget, all infused with humor and charm. Leave every episode feeling inspired, informed, and optimistic about what lies ahead. For more bragging about this show, go to theprofessorislive.com.
Hi, I'm Mark Salisbury. Welcome to The Professor is Live. I'm here with my producer, Rico. That's him down in the corner there. And we're taking on a really big question today. And that question is belief in God at odds with belief in science? Or, put it another way, can you believe in the creator of the cosmos and the Big Bang? For those of you watching the video version, yes, that's the Whirlpool Galaxy behind me. It was taken at the Dimension Point Observatory in Mayhill, New Mexico, right? So that's a good way for us to have a visual to kick off this episode. So let's get right to it. A lot of people think you have to choose science or faith. But today we're going to explore the idea that the two aren't enemies. In fact, they might just help explain each other. So for myself personally, like a lot of people, my journey under this topic started under the stars. I remember camping with friends as a kid, just in the backyard really. But lying there looking up, I realized how small I was. The vastness of space made me feel insignificant and yet strangely connected. I couldn't shake the feeling that all that beauty had order and meaning, that maybe I was part of something that's really much larger than just myself. And Rico, have you ever had this kind of experience?
I think we all have. I think we look into those stars and that they are the same stars that many generations before us have looked at and had the same curiosities.
Yes, isn't that the truth? And we forget about all the people that have seen those stars. So, but switching to a related topic, is this something that bothers me at times, is, I know that evolution is a big part of explaining how we got here. But here's something funny I think about sometimes. My great-grandfather, that's just one great, was born in 31. That's 1831. He fought in the Civil War and had my grandfather when he was nearly 50. So it's possible my family skipped a few evolutionary steps. Maybe the Salisburys are a little behind the curve.
That might explain a few things.
Yeah, thanks, Rico. I knew I could count on you. Oh, but seriously, these kinds of questions about where we came from and where we fit aren't just science questions or faith questions. They're human questions. And one person who's explored them deeply is Dr. Philip Rolnick. He's a professor of theology at the University of St. Thomas. He's the author of Origins, God, Evolution, and the Question of the Cosmos. So let's go ahead and see what he has to say. Joining us now is Dr. Phil Rolnick. And hi, Phil. Great to have you on the show. The very first thing we want to do is we want to give the folks out there a picture of your book. And for those joining us on our podcast, it's titled Origins, God, Evolution, and the Question of the Cosmos. And if you didn't get that down, the title of the book and where you can get it, and that's Baylor University Press website, will be listed in our credits at the end of the show. So let's get right to it, Philip. Why isn't science versus faith really the right question?
Well, I would say it's not the right question because they're both seeking truth. These are both ways of seeking truth. And the possibility of truth, and truth understood as contact with reality on whatever level, on the physical level of physics or chemistry or biology, or the level of contact with God or everything in between, like the love we have for our kids and for our spouses and so forth. But the beautiful point of contact, the most important point of contact for this conversation might be at the beginning of the Gospel of John, where it says, in the beginning was, in the Greek, was the Logos. Now, Logos can be translated as word, but it is even equally well translated as reason. So, Logos is the reason that there is reason. It's the initiating reason that makes reason possible, because as the Gospel of John continues, in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God, and everything that was made through the Logos, so that all of reality, all of created reality is tinged with, imbued with reason from this original divine source. And that is the possibility of science. And that is a faith, that's a foundational document of faith. That's why the two really converge, is the possibility of physics, of chemistry, of biology, and of everything that makes sense in our lives.
So we really can't separate out science and faith. They are together, I think you say.
They're partners in the search for truth.
Oh, that's really interesting. And what about this thing that I know really have a couple of questions, and one of them is how does the universe work, right? The cosmos, and then the other one is who made the cosmos, right? And aren't those really two different questions?
Perhaps, but whoever did it had a way of doing it, and I think that's called Big Bang cosmology.
Yeah.
So Big Bang was a great shock to physicists because they didn't know that the universe had a beginning. And there's still controversy about this, but for now, the scientific consensus, we only know about one universe. It's the one we've got.
Yeah.
And it began 13.8 billion years ago. It has a birthday. If it has a birthday, it has an origin, that looks a lot like what Judaism and Christianity have been saying for many, many centuries.
So our faith and our science really come together for a really total understanding of who we are and what we're really part of.
I think that's right, Mark. And you can always pick a fight, but not advised.
Okay, well, let's get back to me, Philip, because it's always about me with this show here. And one thing is that it seems like that one of the things you write about in your book is challenges to evolution as a theory, and one being that changes in
actually challenges of evolution.
Yeah, of evolution is that changes in species is not really random. And so I wonder if it's possible that my family, having fewer generations, right, than many other families, could that just be part of God's plan for us?
Undoubtedly, the Salisburys were an important part of God's plan for the human race, and still are. That could be that your long-lived ancestors and you, may you also be one of these long-lived people. It's just a mark of good genes.
So it could be a good thing. Oh, very good. Well, thank you for being on the show today and help us understand how that this comes together, science and faith. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go. I thought that was pretty fascinating. I really enjoyed talking with Phil about this. And so for him, science and faith can not only coexist, they can actually strengthen one another. And so for him, Philip, science doesn't threaten his belief in God, it actually supports it.
Yeah, it kind of flips the whole argument on its head.
It does, doesn't it? And so to take it further, I reached out to someone from the science side of this equation, and that's Professor Britta Nethermo from the physics department at the University of St. Thomas. And this is what she had to say about this. Welcome, Professor Nethermo. So let's get right to this. How has your faith shaped your view of science?
Well, like you, my faith journey and my science journey kind of collided in that backyard looking up at the stars. And my first degree is actually in astronomy because of that. And I have always grown up with this idea that faith and science can work together. And I grew up with this idea that God created this amazing universe and gave us as human beings created in his image the ability to understand something about that world. And so the curiosity kind of got the better of me. And I said, I want to know how this all works. And so I ended up going to school for astronomy and studying physics right along with that.
Well, one of the things, and this is a confession time here, every computer scientist wants to invent a language. That's what we do. I did this when I was in industry. But for yourself, now this is the time to tell us the truth. We've got an audience here. It seems to me like astronomers all want to name a planet. Is that true?
Or at least a star. One of the two.
Seems like it'd be overwhelming. So, well, I know that the other part of this is, how has science then really deepened your faith?
Oh, I think it's done two things. It's shown me how incredible the world is. And there's so much we can learn. There's so much to learn. And it's made me realize that there's a lot more out there than just what we can see with our five senses.
Yeah,
and
isn't
so
that true? Yeah.
It's very much we have all these things that we see and know with our five senses, and there's so much more to learn and so much more that we can understand using faith rather than just what we learn in science.
Okay. And what do you tell your students when they ask about the science versus faith debate?
It's actually a really new debate. It's only been around for about 100, 125 years. And before that, the number one reason to teach science was to show how amazing God is. And one of the justifications that was given for teaching science in our sort of K through 12, K through 8 school system prior to the 20th century was to show how awesome God is. So this idea that we can't have both is really a very new idea.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That really is. Well, thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Well, I thought she had some great insights. And so for her, obviously, science doesn't replace faith. It enhances it. Is that what
makes sense? Different questions, different tools.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly right. And this brings us to kind of our last guest here. And he represents another dimension to this that we wanted to explore on the show. And that is how faith causes us to act, especially when it comes to the environment. So I reached out to Dr. Chip Small, professor of biology and environmental science at the University of St. Thomas. And here's what he has to say about that. Welcome, Dr. Chip Small. Hey, thanks for being on the show. So let's get right to it, Chip. What does science tell us about the origins of the universe?
Well, thanks for having me. That's a big question. We know that the universe is approximately 14 billion years old, and we know that from the study of the oldest stars and the expansion of the universe and cosmic microwave background radiation, which is literally the afterglow of the Big Bang. Earth itself is young by comparison to the universe. It's about 4.5 billion years old, and we know that from radiometric age dating. And then the oldest life on Earth, which is single cell microbes, came sometime around 3.7 billion years ago. And that was all we had for a couple billion years, gradually building up oxygen in the atmosphere and changing the Earth. And the first multicellular organisms were like 1.7 billion years ago. So slow process to get to even to that point. And I'll just tell you, what excites me about all this, my background is I'm an ecosystem scientist. So I study, the cycling of nutrients. And what I think is really cool is that these same chemical elements that make up our bodies, the carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen and oxygen, phosphorus, they were all formed in stars billions of years ago. So we are literally built out of stardust. And these atoms had, a long and exciting history moving around the universe before they ever came to form me. And they'll have a long, a lot of adventures long after I'm gone. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is. It actually is very exciting, and it makes me feel a little more special. So let's move on to, what does faith say about our place in all of this creation?
Yeah, I'm not a religious scholar, but certainly in the Judeo-Christian tradition, Genesis calls for humans to have dominion over the earth, or at least it's been interpreted that way for a lot of centuries. I think it's kind of indisputable that at least post-industrial revolution, there's no part of Earth that humans haven't dominated. We've altered global biogeochemical cycles and changed the climate, turned forest into agriculture on a massive scale, and dammed rivers and caused giant floating patches of plastic in the oceans, and incorporated synthetic chemicals into food webs, even in the most remote places on Earth. And we're in the midst of a human-caused mass extinction that rivals the 5 previously natural mass extinctions. But more recently, for sure, this text has been interpreted more as a call for stewardship over the earth. And, a great example of that is Laudato Si, the encyclical written by Pope Francis in 2015 with a focus on climate change and inequality. So I think a lot of people of faith, now or sort of see that relationship with the earth differently, one of more that we have a responsibility to protect it.
Yeah, I knew you would have a good answer for this because, you're an environmental scientist as well as being a biologist. And so doesn't that kind of pull at us from both of these fields, faith and the environment, that we're actually kind of responsible for what goes on down here?
Yeah, I think so. Science has a lot to say about the problems, right? We can measure a lot of things that show that how humans are changing conditions on Earth in a way that's bad for a lot of species, including our own species. And science can be used to evaluate different mitigation strategies, right? What would happen if we continue to do this versus if we change course and do something different? But I think faith traditions are important for answering some deeper questions, like why do we need to care for the planet? Why should we care for other humans outside of ourselves and our immediate circle of family and friends? I think learning how to live together on a crowded planet is really the central challenge of humanity, going forward. And faith traditions give us tools to learn how to live together. So I think that's what it's going to take.
Okay. Well, let's get back to me because, actually, Chip, this show is actually about me. And I'm concerned about the Salisburys. Should we have a elevated concern about the fact that we missed a few generations in our family?
I think you'll be all right. I don't think there's much we can do for you right now.
Chip, a lot of people say that. Hey, thanks a bunch for being on our show. We really appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
My pleasure.
And we are back, and there you have it, Rico. We've heard from a theologian, a physicist, and an environmental scientist, and all three agree science and faith don't have to fight. In fact, they make each other better, and they give us purpose.
Yeah, maybe even a little bit more responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah. And as it was once said, when we see the world as a gift from God, we will do our best to take care of it and use it wisely instead of poisoning it or destroying it. How's that for a quote?
That's pretty good. Is that from Star Trek 3, Search for Spock?
Maybe, but actually I got it from Billy Graham. He wrote it in his My Answer column. So just for those people who are wondering, I can also read as well as watch movies.
You're multi-talented, sir.
Indeed. Okay, before we wrap up, let's check to see if we have any comments from our live audience, which is actually growing. Clearly, there is more than just our relatives, Rico. Most of you see or hear a recording of the show, but our live audience really gets a different experience. And I know you have a way of saying this. What is that, Rico?
Well, it's something for those who are brave enough to watch the sausage being made.
It is indeed. Okay, I'm going to do that quick check here. And I don't see anything. So we've still got kind of a quiet group. And so we'll go back and we'll start to wrap this thing up here. So I just want to tell people that be sure to visit theprofessorislive.com or our YouTube channel, which has the same name, for past episodes. And don't forget our podcast version, which can be found on virtually all platforms, including our YouTube channel. So see you next time on The Professor is Live.
And don't forget to subscribe and actually join us and listen.
Watch past episodes of The Professor is Live on www.theprofessorislive.com. Videos are on YouTube's The Professor is Live channel, and podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, and Google. Hosted by Mark Salisbury. Produced by Rico Smart. Thanks to Dr. Philip Rolnick, Professor of Theology at the University of St. Thomas. His book is Origins, God, Evolution, and the Question of the Cosmos, available at Baylor University Press website. Thanks, too, to Professor Brita Nelamo, Physics Department at the University of St. Thomas. And thanks to Dr. Chip Small, Professor of Biology and Environmental Science at the University of St. Thomas. The Professor is Live. With Mark Salisbury, copyright 2025.